you're not paying. That what it was? If you're not humble, you're not paying attention, right? Thumbs up from Jayadev. Yeah, I love that. That's wonderful. It's just about being more aware, right? If we're more aware of the contribution of others, of all the other factors at play in the environment, and of our own limitations, we're naturally humble. It's just a question of awareness, isn't it? And sometimes we see those persons, those kind of, we all have some degree of arrogance, right? But in some persons, it's especially pronounced. And I think we've all experienced, someone entering the room who's full of themselves, as the expression goes, and everybody can see it except for them, right? They're living in this kind of cloud of their own ego and full of their own self-importance, and they're blind to the feelings of everyone else in the room. Kind of Priya was speaking about this earlier today. They're not, zero empathy, not picking up on how they're being perceived by others, and simply full of their own self-importance, right? We've all had some experience like that, but we all actually have that issue to some degree or another, maybe on a lower level, but we all have it to some degree. We're blinded. There's this line in one of our songs, Ahankare Mata Hoya Nitai Pada Pasadiya. Maddened by ahankar, maddened by this false ego. I forgot my beautiful Lord. I forgot my beautiful Lord. So when we're in that haze of our own false ego, then we cannot perceive what is actually going on. We cannot see the actual reality, what's really happening. So, and welcome to Marie, just joined us, and Zilalita's turned on the camera, and Gangalila too. Thank you very much. So we can see your beautiful faces. Okay, so that's where we left off. So we can pick up with verse 28. And we do have Jayadev. With Jayadev, do you? Oh, your connection's not so good though. Otherwise, it'd be nice to hear you chanting the Sanskrit. But maybe another day will be better.
We can give it a try. Test it out. Test it out.
Okay, let's test it out. Yeah, so from 28 to read a few verses.
328.
Where is it? All right. Thanks for putting me to work. Tattvavitu mahabaho guna karmagayo guna gunyu paranta itmatva sajjate.
No. Yeah, unfortunately not. But let's do it next time you're on a good connection. It was very nice yesterday. Yesterday we have our Wednesday book club, and Jayadev was chanting some Sanskrit verses in the book we're going through now. It was very nice. So next time. Okay, well, I'll just go on with today then. So verse 28 of chapter 3. Oh my God, excuse me. Omajnana timirandasya gyananjana shalakaya chakshor militanjena tasmai shri guruve namaha. And also Sridhar Maharaj's verse of invocation, the Bhagavad Gita, Vande Shri Guru Gaurango Radha Govinda Sundaro Saguna Giyate Chata Gita Gudarta Gauravam. Verse 28 of chapter 3. Tattavitu Mahabaho Gunakarma Vibhagayo Guna Guneshu Vartanta Iti Matvana Sajate Prakriter Guna Samudha Sajante Guna Karmasu Tana Krishna Vidomandan Krishna Vinna Vishalayat Mayi Sarvani Karmani Sanyasyadyatma Chetasa Irashya Nirmamo Bhutva Yudhyasva Vigatadvara Ye Me Matam Vidam Nityam Anutishtanti Manava Shadavanto nasuyanto muchante tepi karmabi. So I will pause there and go to the English. However, O mighty armed Arjuna, one who is in knowledge of the division of the modes of material nature and action, knows that the modes are engaging within the modes and he is detached from them. One who knows that the three modes activated by the demigods impel the engagement of the senses with their objects, knows himself to be independent of these elements. Therefore, he does not consider himself a doer. So as one becomes more purified by their spiritual practice, there's this like space that develops between the consciousness, the Atma, and those covering layers of the mind, Man, the mind, the intellect, Buddhi, and the Ahankara, the ego. There's some space there that grows. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj discusses this in one place, I believe in Subjective Evolution. He explains that the separating layers, they are so close, these different layers, the mind, body, Ahankara, ego, and the Atma soul, they're in our conditioned state, in materially conditioned state, these layers, they are very, very close, very tight. It is like if you have some particular material, like some example. Or let's say a Twix bar. Anything that has, there's layers of caramel, chocolate, and wafer, right? And if they're very, very close together, then it all just seems like one thing. And you may not, when you're biting into, you're not distinguishing between, it's all just melting into one, right? So these layers of the mind, intellect, ego, and soul, Atma, they're very close together in our conditioned state. And we can't really distinguish between them. And what's coming from our mind, we identify as ourselves, as our own. What comes from the intellect, we identify with this. So many thoughts, right? There are so many random thoughts that float around in our head and we identify with them. But actually it's just some idea floating in the atmosphere, like people who talk about voices in their head, right? And if they're very unfortunate, they may act on those voices, which are advising them to do very foolish or even dangerous things. But that's just some thought floating in the atmosphere. That's not who they actually are. So, so what comes from the mind, what comes from the intellect, what comes from the ego, these things pop up in our consciousness and we act upon them or we identify with them because we cannot perceive the separating layers, between the Atma and these other superficial things dancing on the surface. But as our consciousness becomes more purified, as the Atma, the soul, becomes more vibrant and grows within us, then we begin to see there's like, these are things knocking around in our consciousness, but it's something distinct. It's something separate from who we are. It's something distinct from the Atma, from the true self. So there's this space that will start to develop. But at the same time, we're not free enough to the extent that we can be aloof to these things. We may still feel impelled to act upon them, but at least more and more, this clarity will grow within us that this isn't who I am. Maybe I'm a little helpless. This urge is coming up within me. This thought, this desire is coming up within me, and I'm compelled to act upon it. But I realize that this isn't who I actually am. This is something else. So this will become more and more clear within us, and we'll begin to feel like an observer. And this is what's being described in this verse 28. Persons who have this spiritual knowledge, they know that these energies are all just engaging, bouncing off one another. the sense of sight is interacting with the objects of sight, and the sense of taste is interacting with the objects of taste, and so on and so forth. You know, and the material and the energies of passion, the energies of goodness, the energies of ignorance, these are stimulating different activities. The mood of anger, or violent behavior, or greedy behavior. All of these things, they are being impelled by these material energies. This will become more and more apparent as the practitioner becomes more enlightened on the path. And we'll begin to feel like we're witnesses, we are observers of all these things playing out within our consciousness. And we may, sometimes, practitioners have expressed to me, they feel like you start to feel like you're living in a cage, like we're trapped by these different desires and urges and thoughts, it's like a cage that's holding us back, it's tying us down. It's not who we really are. The Atma is distinct, is completely separate from these things. So this will become more and more clear as we progress. And welcome to Mahalakshmi, who's joined us today. Perhaps a friend of Chintamani Devi. Welcome. So going on to verse 29, persons bewildered by the modes of nature are absorbed in the functions of the modes, the engagement of the senses with their objects, as we were mentioning. Enlightened persons should not agitate such ignorant, unfortunate persons by trying to convince them of higher philosophical truths. Rather, they should advise the conditioned souls to practice selfless action, which liberates them from absorption in the modes. Dandavat Mahalakshmi. So this is a point worth picking up, verse 29, that if we observe that persons are very, very caught up in the modes of material nature, we don't need to take it upon ourselves to advise them, to instruct them. If we see someone, is interacting with the environment in a negative way, we don't need to sit and try to explain to them where they're going wrong on every little point and try to explain these fine philosophical points to them. They're not ready for that. That's too far above them at present. So then what is being advised instead? Engage them. Engage them. It's like in our temples, we have opportunities to offer loving service. So if a very ignorant person comes into one of our ashrams, we don't need to sit down and explain to them point by point how they're ignorant, why they're ignorant, where they're going wrong, where it all started to go wrong. We don't need to do that. We can just say, would you mind sweeping the floor? Or could you cook something for us today? Could you make one of your beautiful cakes for us? Or would you mind doing a spot of gardening? Or could you pick up some flowers on your way over? Could you clear the table? Or something sweet like this. You use your energy in a positive way. We don't need to sit in and give you a breakdown of all your faults and all your wrongs, but just do something good, do something useful, do something for the higher cause, do something that's beyond yourself, and this is what is so beautiful about the process of bhakti, about the process of Krishna consciousness, that it's all accommodating. It's all accommodating, and there's room for everyone. There's space for everyone, and it turns into this, like, when you have like a group who are cooperatively moving together, it's like it starts to feel like this beautiful dance. It's a beautiful dance where everybody has some contribution. Somebody can play the drum somebody can play the cymbals, somebody can play the flute, somebody can play the guitar, and somebody can do this dance, and somebody can do that dance, and somebody can make the ambiance nice and the decorations, it's this very beautiful, beautiful dance, and everyone has some part to play in that. And once you enter that beautiful dance, and what you left at the door, you don't think about. You don't think about that. Doesn't matter anymore. Now something beautiful is happening. Something beautiful is coming out. Then if everything else is garbage, we don't need to inspect the garbage right now. There's so much beauty here going on. Everyone's beauty is being pulled out. Everyone's sweetness and goodness is being pulled out and being, actively engaged in this beautiful symphony that's taking place. So we don't need to think about anything else. We don't need to focus on what you did yesterday. We don't want to know. We don't need to know. Yeah, Yuda Manyu Prabhu, one of our legendary members, he had it's probably some famous expression I don't know about, but he used to say sometimes, like if there was something about someone that came up that was a little dubious, some negative gossip about someone, if some hint of it came up or started, he would say, don't ask, don't tell, don't pursue. I really like, don't ask, don't tell, don't pursue. Like, just let it be, let it be. Or there's also that expression, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Like, it's okay, let it be, let's just engage with, let's extract, let's pull out the goodness here, the beauty here. And there's plenty of that. There's plenty of that to work with. We don't need to go and chew on the other things. There's no need. So it's very beautiful. And, in the years I spent living at our ashram in India, that was something that I had the fortune of witnessing and being a part of, on many occasions, and seeing, so many, over the years, so many persons, hundreds of persons would come throughout the year to visit our temple. And those persons are coming from so many different backgrounds, no doubt everybody has so much history, of this and that, and, so many things. But when they enter the gates of our temple, they're coming there wanting to do something good, and they're doing something good. And everyone has some talent, that they can sew beautiful outfits, that they can make a beautiful garden, or they have some particular artistic skill or tech skill, computer skill, or whatever it may be. They're all coming to offer something beautiful, and they have something beautiful to offer. And everything else doesn't matter. We don't need to know, and we don't want to know. So it's a very beautiful principle to try to abide by. This is actually a divine way of living. It was something that our Gurudev expressed on a few occasions that I heard. Something bad happened, forget about it. There's also one expression of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. He says, try to always seek a new acquaintance with your environment. Try to always seek a new acquaintance with our environment. We want to believe in the sincerity of every person that we meet. And so, and when persons are on the spiritual path, every day we have to meet persons thinking who this person was yesterday, they may not be today. They may be someone completely different today. Because they have approached this high spiritual plane. They've touched upon this high spiritual current. And so anything is possible. All things are possible. And if we are faithful persons, we have to believe that. And every day, see our fellow sisters and brothers on the path with this type of open, unprejudiced vision. We want to see one another like this. I believe in the best possible you. I believe in the best possible potential. That you could be that today. We have to sincerely believe that, and it does happen. I'm sure we've all had it. I've had many times experienced that, where I've been surprised, and I've learned to not be surprised, that it's actually normal, that the person you least expected, turns out to be the most inspired a few years down the road. So we should not be surprised by that. We should live like by that, moment by moment, expect that. That's normal, actually. If someone is on the path and connecting with this high, purifying spiritual current. Okay, we'll continue. So it's a very progressive, that's the word that I want, a very progressive, and it's like dealing with what's in front of you, not what's behind, but what's in front of you here and now, and what's the potential for the future. We want to deal with that. It's a very beautiful and high divine way to live. It's a divine way of living. Does anyone else want to share any thoughts on that, or what we've read so far, or should we continue? Welcome also to Charu Damodar Prabhu and also Narottam Nitai, who have also joined us. Okay, then we'll continue. So verse 30, Krishna speaking, surrender all your activities to me with this understanding. All my actions are under the control of the indwelling Lord. In such consciousness, free from possessiveness and anguish, take recourse to battle as your natural duty. This is interesting. Possessiveness and anguish, as these two things go together. If we have a sense of ownership, possession, right, control, then anguish, suffering, lamentation, that will follow soon after. No, it won't be too far behind. No, we're living in that mentality of possessiveness, ownership. And this is a very beautiful mode of beautiful consciousness, beautiful space to live in. Now, all my activities are under the control of the Lord within my heart, the Lord within my heart. Every action, will become an offering. Everything will become an offering. Verse 31, faithful, unbegrudging persons who always practice my teaching, this yoga of selfless action, are liberated from the bondage of action, even though they engage in action. So this is the secret, of becoming free from karma, simply put, that although we are active, although we are engaging with action, we are free from the results of that. We're not being bound by those things, because we are doing so with a mood of detachment from our selfish interest, and everything is an offering. Okay, picking up with verse 32, the Sanskrit. Ye tvetadabhyasuyanto, nanutishtanti me matam, sarvagyana vimudam stan vidinashtana chetasaha, sajisham chesate swasya, prakrite jnanavanapi, prakritim yanti bhutani, nigraha kim kadishyati, indriyasyarte, ragadvesho vyavastito, tayornavasham agachet, tohyasya padipantino, shreyan sadharma viguna, paradharmat sanushtitat, Swadharme nidanam shreya. Parodharmo bhayava. Okay, so we'll stop there and go to the English. 32. But the arrogant who resent my teaching are bereft of all knowledge. And Narutam, thanks for your note. And thanks for being here. But the arrogant who resent my teaching are bereft of all knowledge. Know them to be lost in ignorance. For even a knowledgeable person tends to act according to their nature, mundane inclinations. The living beings' endeavors are dictated by their natures. What then can repression accomplish? Although the senses are attracted to and repelled by the sense objects, one must not be controlled by these urges, for they are the greatest enemy of the candidate for self-realization. Even if it is imperfect, it is better to do one's duty according to one's own nature than to do another's well. Even death in the discharge of one's own duty is better, for to perform another's is dangerous. And there's also a commentary on this verse. So you can go back over these verses. So this is referring to the principle of the Varnashrama system, in which karma yoga is nishkam karma yoga, selfless action is very prominent. So the idea is that, as it said in verse 33, repression to repress our desires, to repress our urges, to artificially try to renounce, it doesn't get you very far. So rather, express your desires. We all have some particular, samskara is the Sanskrit word. Particular samskara means like particular material nature, which we have formed over during the course of our previous lifetimes. So we all have some particular samskara as a result of that, whatever that may be. So we have particular tastes, we have particular likes and dislikes, some particular nature. And those may be, according to conventional, standards, be considered good or bad. Like if someone is, very passionate, or if someone is very renounced, actually, we may say, oh, a very passionate, lusty person is not so good, and a very renounced and apparently peaceful person is good, but actually it's all part of the same material mud in the end. They're just different material natures. If there isn't a connection of the higher interest, this is what I'm saying. If there isn't a touch of true spiritual interest, of the higher interest, the central interest, and it's all actually just part of the same thing, because it's all based on individual interest, right? Someone who is, and this is a bit of a tricky point, to understand and to accept, but as an kind of an extreme example, say you take someone who's like very philanthropic, or very active in environmental concerns, so a veganism, all these things. This is one person, one end of the spectrum. Then let's say you take a drug addict, a bum on the street, who's never done a good thing for anyone. By general standards, you'll say, oh, this person is good and this person is they're not doing so well, they're bad. But from a higher spiritual perspective, they're on the same platform. They're both engaged in material activity. They're both living without consciousness of the true self, and their relationship with the divinity. So it is all part of the same thing. It is like you may have a so-called good mad person and a so-called bad mad person, but they're both mad. Or there may be a good dream or a bad dream, but they're both dreams, right? It is like that. So we all have particular samskaras, particular material natures, which may apparently be, stereotypically be considered good or bad, but it's all part of the same ingredients in the end. And so the idea behind this Varnashrama system, this ancient social religious system of India, is that according to what samskara we have, what material nature we have, we will be placed in society accordingly. Say someone has a violent nature, this is the samskara they've inherited, then rather than just letting them, wreak havoc within the environment and cause so much disturbance, let's make them protectors of society. Let's make them warriors who are protecting weaker persons, or let's make them the bodyguards of important persons. So in this way, this material nature will be expressed in a regulated and beneficial way. So that there's some positive contribution to the environment being made. Because to just go and tell that person, it's like also they're in the world of let's say, so I don't know if sociology is the right word, but I can't think, maybe someone else can say the right word right now. But in terms of if Tunga Rasa was here, she could probably say it, because she's works in that kind of field. But there are different approaches to how let's say, as an extreme example, dangerous criminals or criminals in general, there are different approaches to how such persons should be dealt with, right? One approach is just to lock people away and punish them. And another approach is, well, let's see, can such persons be reformed? Why are they behaving like this? And is there a way in which their nature can be utilized, can be engaged in a positive way? Do we just lock them up forever and repress their natures, or do we find some maybe dangerous criminals? Not a good example. It's a bit too extreme. But some criminal nature on the lower level, let's say. not extreme, psychopath level, but someone who is dysfunctional, let's say. That's a better choice. Someone who is dysfunctional in some way. Do we just try to repress them? Like in the classroom, right? Actually, my sister, one of my sisters, she just got this job as a teacher's assistant, and she particularly works with students who have some kind of disability, like especially autistic children. So this is like a newer, more intelligent way of dealing with such persons. Whereas in previous times, this condition wasn't so understood, and such students might just be branded as idiots or awkward persons and kicked out, right? And told to just pull yourself together. But now persons are understanding, no, these persons, they need help. They're into their brain works in a different way, and we need to find a way that they can progress in a healthy way. We have to help them to channel, what they have in a healthy and progressive way. So this is the idea. Rather than telling persons to repress their material nature, find a way in which it can be engaged and expressed in a healthy way, in a wholesome way, in a way that's making a contribution to the environment. This is the idea of the Varnashrama system. This is what is being referred to here. What is the use in trying to repress? And then eventually, because one's nature, this is the idea, because one's nature is being engaged in a wholesome way, in a positive way, then eventually they'll become purified. of that. You know, whatever lowness was there, whatever negative, especially if it's being offered in connection to the divinity, then what lowness, what impurity will be cleared. And eventually it will transform into something divine. This is the idea. It's such a beautiful process. It is a perfect system, actually. And then this verse 34 is giving us, you know, pointing out that some degree of discipline is also required, that we in our practice, that we should not let our senses totally take control of our lives. But some degree of discipline is required. And then this 35 is making an interesting point here. Dana saying, can't shame someone into being better. Yes, very nice, very nice. Yes, rather we want to inspire them, right? So now this verse 35 is making an interesting point that, you know, we all have a particular duty, right, that is appropriate for us. We have particular roles and duties that are appropriate for us according to our level, according to our particular nature. And that we have to recognize that. We have to have some awareness as to what is appropriate for us here and now, and how that may be distinct from what's appropriate for another person. We are learning one lesson and another person's learning another lesson, right? And sometimes there can be problems when we don't have this kind of awareness. You know, and all kinds of issues can come out of that lack of awareness, right? When we want to apply what's appropriate for us to others, or vice versa. You know, why is so-and-so getting this and I'm not getting that? You know, why am I getting this and they're not getting that? Why are they being told this and I'm being told that? You know, this can cause problems, but there has to be this recognition of what's appropriate for me here and now. What is my duty? What is my business? And what's somebody else's business? And what's appropriate for the other person? You know.
But Vishaka, Didi, I have a question. But I think that the duty changes throughout life, you know, throughout phases. So how, because I can see that that's all, it sounds all, makes a lot of sense, but I think there's also phases where in my life, I'm not so sure about my duty. Will it be revealed?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're absolutely right. Yes, it is time, place, circumstance. It does change. And as you said very nicely, we all go through different phases in our lives. And we have to, and so it requires some self-awareness, some discernment, introspection. And if we have the good fortune, someone whom we trust, whom we can consult with. You know, someone with some more developed vision than ourselves. That is ideal. If we have some you know, trusted friend or advisor, guide, you know, guru, with whom we can consult. You know, what do you think is appropriate for me here and now? What is your perspective on this? That is the ideal. Because yes, you know, it is something that will change, you know, over time. And that was something that we experienced sometimes with our Gurudev, that he would give, I mean, that was something I experienced, and many others experienced, that he would give one instruction at one time, and then the later time he would give a different instruction. You know, this is what is appropriate for you now at this time, and no, this is what's appropriate for you at this other time, later time. So yes, absolutely. It is everything in spiritual life is dynamic and living and changing. No, but yes, it can be a very tricky thing. And it can be very problematic if we are, and that is something that we see too, that persons, they like to apply things in a kind of blanket way. You know, they'll take one instruction in an isolated way, And they want to apply that to every situation and every person. That can be that's kind of fault. That's what I would call blind faith. An unwholesome blind faith. Living faith, seeing faith, as Srila Sridhar Maharaj said. Seeing faith means that we understand the inner purport that is behind particular instructions, and we know when they are appropriate, if they are appropriate, and for who they are appropriate. That is seeing faith. We understand not just the action, but the principle behind the action also. And when you understand a few principles, then you know when to and how to apply them in so many different situations, of so many permutations. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he expressed once that he said, what was the exact context? It was something like when I'm making a conclusion, or before I come to speak on something, he said, I consider in regards to the particular subject matter at hand, what are all the different statements of my guru in relation to this subject? What are the statements of the scripture on this subject? And what are the statements of senior Vaishnavas and my senior godbrothers? He said, I'm considering all of before I come to give an answer, before I come to give a statement on something, I'm considering all of these different things, right? Not just, oh, my guru said on this at this time, this statement, and I'm going to apply it here in a blind way. No, okay, my guru said this on that day, on that occasion, but he may have said something totally the opposite on another day, in another circumstance, right? Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita, but Krishna says that in Srimad Bhagavatam. Then we need to be able to take all of these and see and find the harmony in all these statements and know when they are appropriate in different scenarios. So yes, that requires discernment and developing some feeling for the nuances, the subtleties of different points. And if we have some trusted advisor with whom we can consult, then we are very fortunate. That is ideal. And let's see, we had a few comments here. Marie says, part of the duty is learning to discern our duty for that moment. Yes, very nice. Nice. Totally agree with that. And there are different lessons to be learned for different persons by different examples. Like for example, one thing that comes to my mind now, and I think we mentioned this earlier as well, is that in the 18th chapter, when Krishna makes that his famous statement, give up all your duties and surrender to me. It's said, one of our teachers, one of our gurus, Bhakti Vinod, he commented that Uddhava, who is a close friend of Krishna, Arjuna is known as a dear friend of Krishna. Arjuna, with whom Krishna is conversing, instructing in Bhagavad Gita. And then Uddhava is someone who's known as a more intimate friend, an associate, companion of Krishna. And so our teacher, our guru, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he expressed his opinion that if Uddhava had heard this same statement from Krishna, where he says, oh, give up all your duties and just surrender to me, then Uddhava would have just dropped his weapons and left the battlefields. That would have been Uddhava's response. But that wasn't Arjuna's response. Arjuna, he finally did engage in his duty as a kshatriya, as a warrior prince, and engaged in this battle Kurukshetra. And that was adhering to earlier instructions of Krishna, right? But Uddhava, who is actually a more intimate friend of Krishna, You know, his response would have been just to drop everything and leave, you know. So they're both showing different examples. You can't say that one's right and one's wrong, but they're different levels, you know, different levels and different examples for different persons. And and let's see, Narottam has a question. Where are the kshatriyas? The question amongst devotees. Sorry, what? I'm not quite sure I follow you, Narottam.
Sure. The question I'm posing in terms of like the devotee movement, from the time when Srila Prabhupada was here until now, and there's been some discussion among devotees that you know, there's devotees out there, but Srila Prabhupada wanted to establish the Varnashram system before he physically left the world. So there was like some discussion among devotees that, you know, in the hopes of establishing Varnashram system, we've kind of like not given importance to the Kshatriya aspect of devotional service, and I kind of so I was kind of referring to that in the sense like I don't know if it makes sense 100%, but like, you know, do we have like devotee lawyers? And I don't know, it was just kind of like it was something that I was thinking. I just thought I'll share.
Well, I mean, firstly, I will have to say that, yes, I'm aware that Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he did make an emphasis on the Varnashrama system, and it was something that he wanted to institute in a widespread way, you know, throughout the world. And of course, we can understand, you know, why he did that, and we can appreciate that. But ultimately, it is a societal matter. You know, Varnashram is ultimately a societal matter, and it is something that is ultimately, in the final consideration, separate from what pure Krishna consciousness is. And you know, ultimately, Krishna consciousness is Vaishnavism. Is actually, Vaishnavism does not care about Varnashram at all. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur incorporated some elements of that because we are not pure souls, right? We have our material natures and we live within society, so we need to deal with society. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he incorporated some elements of the Varnashrama system, and our gurus, they use this expression, Daiva Varnashram, God-centered Varnashram, as opposed to Asura. Gurudev used to express Asura Varnashram, demonic Varnashram, which is just focused on our selfish worldly interests. So we are interested in a Daiva Varnashram system, you know, God-centered, Krishna-centered social system like this. But at the same time, we recognize that this is ultimately something distinct from Krishna consciousness. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj and Srila Gurudev, they did not put, I mean, they put practically zero emphasis on that. They were focused more on the purely spiritual aspect of things. So, but in a kind of you know, without like being so specific about like different roles and classifications, you know, in a general kind of way, you know, our Gurudev and the way that our temples run is, you know, that if someone has some particular quality, you know, that can be engaged in, you know, in some way. I can say like our Gurudev, he had bodyguards, you know, we had some tough devotees, you know, like Jagadananda, you know, like Arvind Lochan, you know, like Ramachandra. Some of you may know some of these names, you know, like they have these like tough, strong natures. And they also in our temple in Navadvip, there in earlier years, they had night watch duty. So there would be devotees who would patrol in the nighttime, you know, protecting the mat, you know. So these are devotees with some kshatriya nature, warrior nature, and they're using that, you know, using that in seva, you know.
Yeah.
So in this kind of natural, organic way, you know, we'd see how our Gurudev would engage persons' natures, but it was never like a formal thing, and it was never like a kind of agenda that our Gurudev had to institute the system in a kind of widespread and organized way, but in this kind of organic way. And yes, we have devotee lawyers. We have one here, one Hungarian devotee lawyer who was just here a few days ago, Krishna Sundari. So we definitely have devotees. We also have one in Mexico that I know of. And they do service, you know, with their expertise, they're doing service for Krishna. So
Yeah, thank you for explaining, Vishaka. The only thing is my conditioning is such that you know, I'm trying to be a devotee, but I'm still coming from like, you know, like an Indian Hindu background where you know, in like not too long ago, but the recent past, there was a widespread of trying to establish Varnashram Dharma across the Hindu community, led by not necessarily Hare Krishna devotees, but like other devotional paths, which are a little bit offshoots or somewhat similar. So I was just, I don't know, it's kind of that kind of, you know, conditioning comes back to my mind that would the society benefit from a widespread application of Varnashram's Dharma, and then, you know, as we keep the core of our devotional activity. But I guess, you know, maybe that's just like a historical context. Maybe it might not be so applicable in the modern day world. So,
I mean,
Can I add something?
yes, please, Jayadev, please.
The first thing that came up for me was what I've heard repeatedly is that we're in Kali Yuga, and that basically no one here, no matter what their birth is even a Shudra. Like the lowest of the four principal we're not even up to Shudra. Even the people in Brahmana families are not even Shudra in Kali Yuga, because it's Kali Yuga. So the actual Varnashram system doesn't even apply in this age.
Yes, Jayadev, those were my thoughts also, and I feel like that's you know, one reason why our Gurudev and Padam Gurudev, they didn't I mean, amongst other reasons, you know, but one reason, you know, if it can be done, it is surely a very good thing, right? The principle I mean, in Bhagavad Gita, we're coming to it. I think it's in chapter 4, but maybe later. But in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna announces, you know, I made the Varnashrama system. Like that came from me. So if it comes from Krishna, obviously it's a good thing, right? You know, we don't want to denigrate the system. Obviously, it's a wonderful system if it works, you know. And actually, one interesting point came up. I mentioned in one of our meetings earlier this week, I was sharing kind of the atmosphere that we've had here in our new ashram in Hungary over this, because we've had this like sweet gathering here over this last week, and it's been very beautiful atmosphere. We had the big festival on last Friday, and then over the next few days it was a smaller group, and it was just this kind of sweet, intimate gathering, and where we were pretty much sitting all day together talking, and principally Madhusudan Maharaj and Devashish Prabhu from London, who were like our seniors here, and so many wonderful stories. But one interesting point which Devashish Prabhu shared, he was speaking about how he was repeating something he'd heard from our Gurudev, and it was something that I hadn't heard before. He was speaking about, you know, in the scriptures you hear in the Vedas, Vedic literature, you hear about different like yogic processes or austerities that can be performed in order to obtain particular powers, right? We hear about these siddhis that yogis can develop, of being able to walk on water, or powers of telepathy or manifestation, right? These different kinds of powers, being lighter than air, that and then there are different practices that are described which will enable one to attain these things. But our Gurudev, he mentioned once how in this age of Kali, in this age of quarrel, the Iron Age, the atmosphere is so polluted that even if someone follows all these practices, then they may or may not obtain the results that would have been obtained in previous ages, because it is such a degraded age. It is such a polluted age. So the environment is contaminated, the environment is polluted. And if there's not enough purity in the atmosphere, then these kinds of powers cannot be achieved. So yes, it is a very degraded age, and if it is possible to achieve the system or not in this current era, I'm not sure about that. Let's see. We have some comments. I think when vocational counseling is well done, it approaches a similar goal. Of course, the last few decades, vocational education and counseling has been largely defunded, so it isn't been doing well. And Narottam says, I feel it's widely needed, even if we are not qualified or not able to do so properly. There are so many difficulties in Kali Yuga. My opinion, Hare Krishna. Well, all I can say is we wish you all the best. Sincerely, if you feel that inspiration to contribute to that cause, then we certainly support you. No doubt it is a noble cause. Okay, well, we've just, I think we've come, my clock on my computers, and I don't know what time zone it's on actually, but what time is it 8 o'clock? It's 11 o'clock in California, I think. Chintamani's nodding her head, yeah. Okay, so we've come to our time. Anyone want to add any final thoughts to our discussion? Please excuse me if I offended anyone, made any offenses. Okay. Chintamani, you want to add any closing words? Okay, Gangalila then. You want to pray us out for today?
Hare Krishna. Yes, maybe we clearly have our duty of the day, duty of the moment revealed. May we be focused enough and open-hearted to really see what's right in front, my duty for right now, and not be too worried about the rest of society at this moment. And then we can just chant the Maha Mantra together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dandavad.
And that was beautiful, Gangalila. Thank you so much. And
thank you so much for your service, Vishaka Didi. You're always showing up. And I like you're wearing like something frilly, so you have to get some new clothes, huh?
Yeah, this is one of the things I got when I lost all my things. I had to go out and buy some random things.
I heard.
They did finally find my suitcase, but it's in Ireland. They delivered They delivered it to the wrong place. So
But it's found, so that's
but they
good.
found it, yeah, so I'm glad they found it.
Oh, I want to, can I add one last thing?